Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where myself and today's guest sweated our way through 30-degree heat in our homes, which is about 90 degrees Fahrenheit to our US listeners. And of course, here in the UK, we don't have air conditioning. We try and keep the heat in, which is fine until a day like today. But Shamir is the founder of a company called Growth Gorilla, a growth marketing agency focused on helping Fintech, proptech, and financial services firms smash through their marketing goals. And originally launching his career in financial services as an equity broker, Shamir has worked for big brands before moving on to focus on more client acquisition and eventually becoming marketing director at a well-known online trading platform provider. And while working with marketing agencies as a client, Shamir couldn't help but notice their flaws. Most marketing agencies simply didn't understand how things worked inside financial services companies. But I don't want to reveal too much, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Shamir in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Well, look, my name's Shamir. I'm the MD and founder of Growth Gorilla. We're a growth agency that helps fintechs with their growth and go-to-market strategies.
Fantastic. And before you came on, I learned that Growth Gorilla is a growth marketing agency focused on helping fintech, proptech and financial services firms all smash through their growth marketing goals using your technology. But before we go there, can I ask that you share your origin story? Where did your passion for tech come from? What made all these worlds collide and essentially put you on the path you're on today?
Yeah, of course. So my background is actually financial services. I was a broker, private client broker many years ago, probably going back 16 years ago. And in that world, funnily enough as well, kind of got taken over by technology. In reality, as a private client broker, you relied upon technology and news and information to help you make decisions, but via expensive Bloomberg terminals. But pretty much once that information became, let's call it, open to the public, the margins started to decrease, and the world got a lot more competitive and a lot more smaller very, very quickly. So I made the move over to heading up the sales and marketing department for an online trading company. And when I sort of first joined, we had the industry had just gone from a telephone broking sort of service to an online trading service where people would download their trading platform onto their machines and they could execute trades that way. And so throughout my tenure there, we eventually launched a web native app and then eventually a mobile app. It was sort of one of the first generations of fintech, I would say. Now if you're launching any sort of fintechy tech product, it pretty much just comes with a mobile app. But at that time, it was sort of rare and unusual. So I sort of done my time there, and then eventually decided that I really enjoyed the marketing side of what I was doing, and I sought out to offer my services as a CMO to various companies. And what I found was that although I wanted to do some really cool and exciting stuff, actually, the audience that really resonated with me was the financial services / sort of fintech audience, because actually it was a territory that at that point there weren't many marketers that had experience on promoting an online financial solution, let alone a mobile app. And then my sort of journey went from consulting in those sorts of areas to delivering on strategies and eventually creating an agency. And we're here today now. And we've kind of gone down the path now where we only really serve fintechs. We don't really do much traditional financial services anymore.
Wow, what a great story. I love how that path led you to founding Growth Gorilla there. But for anyone listening and hearing about Growth Gorilla for the first time, can I ask you just set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about the problems that you set out to solve for your customers, and also what it is that makes you different from other solutions out there?
Yeah, of course. So I think the key problems that we set out to solve for our clients. So if you sort of divide sort of the fintech world into sort of two parts at the moment, you've pretty much got fintechs that are now sort of going mainstream and are looking to move from this territory of being called a startup, and they're sort of heading into scale up territory and growth territory. And then the other half is new fintech propositions that are coming out that are startups. They've got an idea, they've got some VC funding, and they need to go into the marketplace. So these sort of two things that we do is we help the more sort of scale up organizations, the more companies that want to go more mainstream. We help them with their growth, help them come up with their growth strategy and how to scale their businesses. And then for the sort of newer entities that are out there that are sort of looking to get their first few customers in, we help them develop and execute their go-to-market strategies. And I suppose in terms of what makes us unique, I think I think actually it's probably less of the tech and more of the knowledge on how to promote the technology. Most agencies will be fairly generalistic and have a couple of clients in financial services, a couple of clients, say in FMCG, a couple of clients in e-commerce, and then you have some agencies that will be slightly more focused in those sorts of areas. But as far as I know, there's no real growth agency out there that purely focuses on fintech. And I think the big reason for that is that when you're marketing, fintechs and to a degree, SaaS products or any technology solutions, it's a different type of mindset. And that mindset and that knowledge comes with experience. So I would probably say, our USP is experience as individuals, but then also experience of working with close to now 30 fintech companies and either bring them into the market or helping them grow.
And before we started recording today, you was telling me how you have that very nice problem of being incredibly busy right now. So you really seem to have tapped into something here. But just to bring to life what we're talking about, do you have any examples of how you've helped some of these fintechs to go to the next level with your growth marketing strategies? And I appreciate you probably can't name any, but if there's any stories behind you that you can share, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, of course. There's a whole host. I think the two or three that kind of spring to mind. We've got one client who's disrupting the mortgage market. That's incredibly interesting. They're taking a hyper-local approach into targeting end users. So if you take an individual, for example, who's renting at the moment, who is looking to purchase a property but doesn't really want to use government assisted products or propositions like Help to Buy schemes or whatever, they've managed to combine, say, working with third party investors along with a fairly complex customer journey, and you could call it almost like a matching service, where they've identified properties that investors would be interested in investing into, and then identifying potential homeowners that they would want to live in those areas as well. And that particular client is, as I said, is very, very interesting because we're targeting users on or potential homeowners on a hyper-local basis, where we're using multiple channels like Google, like Facebook, at almost postcode level, driving them into the platform, and then using sort of really highly detailed sort of CRM activity to then communicate to those homeowners or potential homeowners on why they should use this product, on the properties that are available to them, how the process works, and then with support from customer services, driving them through the funnel sort of end to end. I suppose another one that's really interesting that we help work with, one of my favourites and very topical at the moment, is a crypto trading platform based out of Eastern Europe, really, really aggressive growth targets, on the heels of the bigger players like, Coinbase or Bitpanda. And, that particular example it's interesting because you've kind of got two sort of things going on there. One is you've got an audience that has to be bought into wanting to invest into cryptocurrencies because, a lot of people talk about it, but not everybody's actually that heavily invested into it. And then the second thing is that you've got regulatory implications. And then also you've got almost embargoes by certain platforms that don't allow you to invest into, that don't allow you to advertise crypto solutions. So you're almost like, to a degree, out of the gates, you're hamstrung. But I think there's a lesson that can be learned there for sort of any sort of tech company that's going after a niche audience or a specific audience. If you really niche down and get your messaging really specific, you can pretty much make any channel work to a degree. So they're probably two really, really interesting ones. I think on the more sort of techie side, we've got a couple of different platforms that are leveraging open banking at the moment. One for financing for SMEs, another for credit scoring. Again, really, really interesting areas. And big hurdle is that open banking is still relatively new. So we're having to support them with, helping create educational pieces, content pieces, and messaging communications, not just managing the channels in order to drive users into the platform and then eventually get them activated, which always seems to be something that tech companies forget. It's all about getting users on board, but it's about getting active users on board, which is a big part of it.
Like you said, as this is a tech podcast, and we might have techies that want to take a look under the hood. And what I'm curious about here is you've got so much vast knowledge here and experience in the industry, but how are you using and leveraging technology to make what you do possible? Is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah, I think probably the most interesting bit of tech, at least for my opinion, that we use, would be, the sort of data analytic platforms. In fact, you had one of your previous guests, I think it was the CEO of Heap.
Yeah.
And Heap is one of our sort of go-to platforms, or you could call it our recommended platforms for clients, especially within the fintech sector. Because right now, I suppose things have changed quite a bit with the way that marketing is being conducted. It's no longer sort of single channel or one or two channels. It's a multi-channel approach that you're having to take. So you've got users kind of coming in from lots and lots of different sort of angles. They're coming in via Google organic, Google search, social channels, personal profiles that founders are trying to build up their personal branding. And they're all coming onto the site, and then they're signing up, and then the poor CMOs have to then answer the dreaded question, which is, well, what channels are working and why are we spending money there? Because it's not delivering anything. But, these data analytics platforms, these, tech platforms allow us to gain really, really high visibility over, multi-platform or cross-channel strategies, and also allow us to, answer the one big question, which is attribution. Where did that customer come from? And then actually using that technology and then coupling that with, our team, which is obviously heavily data-led, taking that data and using those insights to then make decisions moving forward. Without that tech there, and we wouldn't be able to do that. And there's definitely some proprietary stuff that we're going to start looking into. But yeah, I think the big piece of tech that's making all of this possible are platforms like Heap or their competitors.
And when you first started out, you quickly noticed how technology was impacting your world there and the financial landscape. And you strike me as the kind of guy that's always going to be looking and what's coming next. So are there any emerging technologies that you're keeping your eye on or that excite you at the moment?
Yeah, I think, I think for me, again, on the more sort of fintechy side, I definitely think that open banking is going to be a really, really interesting area. I'm sort of quite, I'm lucky to a degree that, I get to speak to a lot of companies that haven't even started any marketing activity yet. So, we're kind of having conversations with them when they're almost still at, development stage. They're not even a beta quite yet.
Yeah.
And seeing, in the last week alone, without sort of going into sort of any great detail, I've probably come across or probably spoken to 3 or 4 companies that are using open banking in a multitude of ways. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that area, really develops. And we're already seeing companies using it for financing. Seeing companies using it for credit scoring. There's going to be money management and all sorts of other stuff that comes out of that. And as open banking grows in the UK, we're probably a little bit more educated on that than say on the continent or a couple of prospects I was talking to in Australia. So I think it's still really, really emerging. I think it'll be really, really interesting to see where we end up in 5 years and how open banking develops and what we're using it for.
And as someone that's been on quite a journey throughout your career, I've got a question I'll ask for any founders that could be listening anywhere in the world at various stages of their journey. What would you say are the biggest lessons that you've learned? And is there any advice that you would pass down to any wannabe startup founder that's armed with an idea, but just a little bit cautious about heading before making that leap into the unknown?
Yeah, I did think about this, and I think there's probably 3 things that are really, really important. And I'd probably guess that nearly every founder has heard it, but then ignored it and then end up learning the hard way.
Yeah.
I think it's prioritization is one. Really, really deciding, what's going to have the biggest impact at that moment in time for whatever it is, whether it's a feature that you're adding onto your product, or it's a bit of marketing activity that you're pushing out there. I think the second thing is really learning to delegate. I think that's hugely important, and not getting stuck in the weeds, and learning to trust your team. Or if you haven't got a team quite yet, looking at what you can sort of outsource to partners, agencies, freelancers, contractors. And then, the other thing is sort of levers, and it kind of sort of sums up the first 2 points, which is, what's the biggest lever that you can pull at that given moment that's going to give you the most results. And I think then also just generally in terms of advice and, in terms of launching a product, I'd probably say, distilling all of that, is go niche. I think the future of products is going to be creating products not for the masses but for really specific niches. We're now seeing neobanks and SaaS platforms creating the Uber for or the neobank for. So I think a great place to start is to have one product or a series of features that offer one type of audience, one type of customer, and then go from there. And try not to be all things to all people.
Excellent advice. And what about yourself and Growth Gorilla? What's next for you guys? Where do you go from here?
Yeah. Next for us here, I think we're going to be investing more into sort of proprietary technology and going down the path of coming up with solutions to get the best out of our customers' data in order to help them drive better results. So we'll probably end up building our own sort of team of engineers and data scientists sort of over the next 12 months. I think that's going to be the next big thing for us. Looking at our customer base, they're hugely data-led. It's important that we are as well. And then just knowing how their platforms work and what they need, we need to find ways to hook in their proprietary platforms into, let's call it reporting systems. And I think, some of the ones that we have off the shelf right now aren't quite fit for purpose for the fintech sort of arena. So I think we'll be exploring that that area more in a lot more detail.
Excellent. Well, you very kindly shared your origin story, the direction of the company and everything there. But I'd like to have a little bit of fun with you before we sign off today and ask you, what was the soundtrack to your tech startup journey? Is there a particular song or piece of music that has inspired you along that journey, or just helps you get your head in the zone before a big meeting or delivering a keynote? Is there any particular song that means anything to you that we can add to our playlist?
Yeah, I was looking through your playlist, and you already got some Tupac on there. So I thought I'd go in a slightly different direction, do something different. I think the one big song that's kind of always resonated with me and gets my head in the game is probably Notorious B.I.G.'s "Juicy." Definitely a favourite of mine.
Cool. Well, I'll add that to the playlist right away. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more information about Growth Gorilla, wanting to contact you or your team, what's the best starting point?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me directly on my LinkedIn. My name's Shamir Sachdev. I imagine it'll be in the show notes. You can reach out to me on there. Alternatively, you can jump onto our website. It's growthgorilla.co.uk.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. So much I've loved about chatting with you today. More than anything, your story and how you've got where you are now and what you're building towards and how you're leveraging technology. But more than anything, just thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
What a great guy. I'm so glad we battled through the heat to bring you today's interview. And I love how he was equipped with a background in financial services and technology. And as a result of that, Shamir struck out on his own, advising courageous fintech, proptech and financial services firms on how to accelerate their growth. And these are the stories that I hope inspire you to follow your path, use your knowledge to create a solution to that gap you see in the market using technology. But please, I want you to come on here, share your stories. We can all inspire each other every single day. So keep those messages and questions and whatever it might be coming in. Remember, my website is techblogwriter.co.uk if you need anything. But a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.